Hello, I'm Witch. I love FNAF. I grew up with it, and it's become a special interest of mine that comes and goes. Mainly coming when a FNAF-based video appears on my YouTube feed. The game itself and the lore is pretty cool, and I love how there's now 3 different canonical timelines all following the same base story. It has a lot of content, and while I can see why people think it's fallen off since Steelwool took over development, I do still love it even if it's not following where we thought it'd go in the youth of the series. That being said, I am an artist who enjoys writing and making OCs, so of course I've had my fair share of cringe FNAF AUs and OCs, including the one that I'm vamping in this very video. Welcome to Jester's Day Center. Side note before we start with the designs and the process, while I don't think making it into a game is possible, at least for me, I do want to open myself up to making little projects surrounding this in the future. So, while some lore will be discussed, I won't touch on the juicy bits too much. Of course, it won't be boring, but the meat of the story won't be touched upon no matter how early you learn it in this non-existent game. Also, while I say it probably won't be made into a game, a reason hyperfixation I've landed upon is FNAF game mechanics specifically. Thank you, Dexter White, for awakening my autism. Therefore, in this series, I'll be talking about that stuff and what the current plan is. Nothing set in stone, though, because of course I can't test any of these mechanics. Long side note over, let's get into the video. So, for the first design, I actually wanted to design the player character, considering you play as him. His name is Christopher Vincent, and he comes from a very wealthy family. He becomes a night guard to find out what happened to his brother. That's all I'll share on that for now. Chris is the eldest, and canonically is about 36 by the time this all happens. Now, let's get into the theoretical game itself. How does the office work? Well, unlike most FNAF games, you're actually thrown into a training shift, a tutorial if you will. The old security guard acts as the only threat, acting like any old animatronic would as they try and get to your office. You can redo this as many times as you want to get used to the office controls. As for the office controls, much like FNAF 1, you have 2 doors with a light and a button to close it. However, you also have a front window. This window isn't too useful for the first few nights of the game, and is mainly just yet another window to see animatronics coming down to your hallways. You then, of course, have your cameras. Nothing too special about these yet. However, before we talk about Night 1, I want to talk about the day segments. After Night 1, and in between each night, you'll be thrown into a free-roaming mode. In this mode, you'll have to find clues relating to a specific missing person to prove they went missing here, unlike what the owner has stated. The first day is actually about your brother. While each clue relates to each person, they all have one clue in common: the tapes. These tapes contain 100% proof that they were there in the form of security tapes of the night they went missing. Your brother's tape is actually found in your starting location after you've already found everything else. Almost like it was placed there after you left. There's an extra thing with the days. Each day you'll actually see your manager wandering around. For the first day, he buys the excuse you make and you can freely walk around him no issue. However, as the game progresses, well, the theoretical game, but as it progresses, he'll become more suspicious. You'll have to go from making sure you aren't picking anything up around him to quite literally sneaking through the day center to not let him know you're there entirely. Now that that's out of the way, let's move to Night 1 and talk about the first actual animatronics you'll see. We'll start with the main man himself, Jester. He appears in Night 1 alongside his sister Princess and acts as any basic animatronic would. No special gimmicks, he just appears in one of your doors with a quiet sound cue. Much like Bonnie and Chica, he will only appear in one of your 2 doors. As for his design, you can see he's very humanoid. In fact, under the mask you see him wear, he has a silicone faceplate controlled by a complicated endoskeleton that allows him to emote and lip-sync to his own voice properly. As you can also see, he's very much based on clowns and jesters. However, you also see a crown. The animatronics have a canonical cartoon that plays in the theater portion of the day center. It's called Jester's Chaotic Kingdom, and it follows the heir to the throne, Jester, as he goes against his princely duties in favor of mischievous pranks. The animatronics as well also follow their canon personalities. Jester is known to be very playful with children, being the one to advocate for having fun and playing around. You can also see in his design he has wheels. While they can retract so that he can walk around normally, The main way the animatronics get around is actually on wheels, as if they were on roller skates. Jester himself is actually supposed to be a direct parallel to his sister, as you'll see, but first to keep his mask on around the kids. Now, as this is a FNAF-based project, of course there's souls involved, you know, spooky souls possessing animatronics to get whatever revenge they need. So, let's get into the one possessing Jester. Forrest grew up being friends with not the best people. He got in a lot of trouble, but nothing really past petty stuff that teenagers would find cool. The day center was actually around when he was a kid, but without the animatronics. It was smaller, too. However, when he was 26, 7 years prior to the events of the game, he actually went to go explore it, and take home some mementos of his childhood before it got completely redone. This, however, would be his demise, as he didn't notice the green Jester-like animatronic stalking his every move. Such a sad fate, really. Anyway, let's move on to the next animatronic we're talking about in this video. As stated above, Jester attacks during Night 1 with his sister, Princess. Her design is almost a complete opposite, common trope with sibling characters. Instead of being more clown-like, though she does have some Jester/clown features, she's more princess-like, as her name suggests. She also has shorter tails on her hat, longer sleeves, and a more somber expression on her mask. She's also entirely pink instead of green. Like her brother, she has wheels that can retract, and she'll appear in the opposite door her brother appears in. She acts basically the same. In the cartoon, however, she appears to take her duties more seriously and acts as a narrative foil to her brother. She constantly nags him about getting back to work and thinks her brother's childish ways are stupid. Though, in multiple episodes, they end up working together to get out of predicaments. Her animatronic tends to get into petty spats with her brother, constantly trying to make children like her more. The entire day center basically turns into a Jester versus Princess war on a regular basis, with kids ending up in verbal arguments as to who's better. The kids who do like her, she's also very playful with, but in a more calm and chill manner than Jester. For example, while Jester would be playing tag or hide and seek, Princess would be reading a story or having a tea party. Alright, ghosty time, who's possessing her? Well, let's introduce you to Lizette Havens. Liz was actually the most recent person to go missing, and had a YouTube channel where she talked about crime. She got a little too close to the truth, and ended up killed just like the others. The clues you find on her actually includes her laptop, where you can see an unfinished video and tons of evidence. All of this actually appears in the second day segment, right after night 2. Now, with all these game mechanics, they're pretty basic, but that's just because they're the first animatronics that appear. The other animatronics appear in later nights, and a couple have a unique mechanic that wasn't mentioned yet. Though that'll be talked about in their own videos. However, this video still isn't done. Before this video closes, I want to tease a little bit of the lore, just something to pique your interest that maybe some of you would find obvious, but is actually crucial to explain future mechanics that will appear in the later episodes of this series. Once you complete Night 1, before the Day 1 segment, you actually get a cutscene. 6 AM is passed and you're free to go home. Princess seems to have gone back to her place, but Jester's nowhere to be seen. You think nothing of it, and get up to leave, but just as you're rounding the corner, a certain Jester ominously rolls into view. Before you can do anything, he pounces on you. He begins to choke you, going on and on about how he's waited so long after you abandoned him, his monologue echoing in your head as your consciousness begins to slip. And just as you're passing out, he realizes he doesn't actually want to kill you. You wake up, just catching a glimpse of that green Jester leaving down the hallway. Fast forward to Day 1, and you're watching the security tape you found at the front door. You watch as your brother runs from a much more robotic moving Jester before his demise. You wonder if it's truly possible, looking down at the old beaten-up keychain you found here that belonged to your brother. You know it's his, because you have a matching one. You find Jester in his usual spot, presenting the keychain as a surge of recognition flickers into his eyes. So, here's the end of the video. I've had a lot of fun writing and designing this. This honestly has become less of a FNAF AU and more of a FNAF-inspired story. I'm not complaining though, as I love when I can turn an AU idea into their own characters and stories. What did you think of Jester's Day Center? Are you excited to see the rest of the cast? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe if you like this sort of stuff. That being said, I'm Witch. Stay safe.